To everyone who's listening to this instalment of the Instant Impact interview series. I've got to say that I'm a little bit humbled and really excited to be talking to today's guest, who I'll introduce shortly. Not only because of what I think for people who are new leaders, new managers, or even experienced leaders or managers in the workplace are going to get out of it, but also just for the great example that our guest displays and demonstrates in terms of what she's been able to achieve for her own career and the impact that she's having on a number of young people in and around her professional networks. And that person who I'm really excited to introduce you to now is Bianca Welsh. Good morning, Bianca.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. It really is. Now, before I kick off the interview, and for everyone listening, I'd just like to give you a rundown of Bianca's resume, which is, I have to say, really impressive, and just so will give everyone listening just a small insight into the incredible value and breadth of knowledge that Bianca's going to share with us over the next 45 minutes to an hour. But Bianca is currently the co-owner of 3 Launceston award-winning businesses: the Stillwater Restaurant, the Black Cow Bistro, and the Mill, Providore and Gallery. And whilst having worked at Stillwater since 2006, which Bianca brought in as a partner in 2010, she was then provided the opportunity to open the Black Cow Bistro with the Stillwater partners when she was only 21 years old. And since 2008, since making that purchase, it's continued to be as busy as ever. The Mill Providore has been a more recent addition and was purchased by Bianca and her partners in July of 2014. And it's been the perfect addition to their overall vision of providing top quality Tasmanian produce to the area with excellent customer service. Now, growing up in the northern suburbs of Tasmania, Bianca attended the Brooks High School prior to going on to Newstead College and completing her diploma of hospitality management at the Drysdale Institute. Since then, having worked her way up through the ranks of a local McDonald's store, where she was one of the youngest staff to be promoted to a shift manager at only 16 years old, Bianca went on to work in hotels, cellar doors, retail and restaurants before becoming a manager at Stillwater. Since that time, and through her roles in human resources within the 3 businesses, Bianca's developed a passion for psychology and is currently halfway through a part-time degree at the University of Tasmania in behavioural science. Along with that, Bianca is actively involved in her local community, sitting on the board of Cornerstone Youth Services, which is the lead agency in the north of Tasmania for Headspace, and is also frequently seen speaking in schools around the north of the state, discussing topics from the benefits of staying in school, how to achieve your goals, and looking at a career in hospitality. Now, this year, 2015, has been a really big year for Bianca on a personal note. She was nominated as a finalist in the Young Tasmanian of the Year Awards. Pretty outstanding achievement for someone still so young. And most notably, though, Bianca was nominated in the 2015 Electrolux Appetite for Excellence Young Restaurant of the Year Award. And really excitingly, Bianca was this year's winner. So a huge achievement for herself. And great, I think, great reward for effort, given that Bianca was also nominated as a finalist in 2013. Now, one of the key messages that Bianca likes to get across in any of her speeches or interactions, or thankfully interviews for us today, is the benefits of having emotional intelligence, and how, in addition to that, as a business owner, a business leader, or a manager of people, how you can provide a supportive environment for your own teams and lead to a greater understanding of mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and substance abuse, which are all increasingly prevalent issues in our society today and the modern day workplace. So without any further hesitation, Bianca, I'd really like to say thanks for you or to you personally for putting aside this time to speak about some issues that are really important to the staff, young staff in particular, in our workplace today, around depression, anxiety, eating disorders, substance abuse, and I guess more notably the broader topic of how do we recognise when anyone on our team is challenged by those particular situations or circumstances, and I guess why you believe emotional intelligence is so important in today's workplace.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I guess emotional intelligence is just so important for everyone involved to achieve the same goal to begin in the workplace. So for your staff to be psychologically stable, to be enjoying their job, to be engaged in what they're doing, to be happy outside of work and inside of work, achieves what we're all trying to do in the workplace, and that's provide a service or provide a product or provide an experience to our customer, because ultimately we all need to work. We all need to look after that customer in an increasingly competitive place. We need to be delivering the top standards. So I guess from my perspective, I've had experiences over the years, particularly one that led me to wanting to understand the psychology of what's going on in my staff's minds, was a girl who, she was one of my best waiters, was a really hard worker, was great with the guests, and then suddenly her work just dropped, her attitude changed. She was quite vague, she was making a lot of mistakes, she was very distant, and the more we sort of delved into what was happening was that we realised that she was actually bulimic and that she was purging at work, and the other girls was becoming privy to it, becoming quite upset about it, and I don't know, but I'm sure that some customers were probably also privy to it as the bathrooms are shared with the staff. So I guess I lost a lot of sleep over it. I didn't know how to approach it. I Googled how to approach it, and I eventually did, and I fortunately had a really good outcome, and she came around to admit that she was having problems at home, that she'd suffered from this when she was younger, and it had reared its head again because she was under some stress, emotional stress. Providing her with standing, she was able to get help, got back on top, and was back to her normal self, and thanked me for being supportive and understanding of where she was. And I guess from my perspective and what I've seen in other workplaces is that someone who would be behaving like that would just be very quickly written off. Perhaps, particularly as a casual worker, they're just not given shifts and they're just forgotten about. They have a bad experience with that workplace, and then they just they don't have a job, or they leave the job, where you've lost that person, and so providing that support, she stayed with us for another year, and now she's studying medicine and really happy and healthy. So we've hopefully empowered her to continue on in the workplace just in general, rather than just for our workplace to benefit us.
Yeah.
And I've had examples of these all through the years where, I guess other workplaces would very quickly just sort of fob them off and ignore what's happening, and just, they'd be out of a job. And in the skills shortage that we're faced with at the moment, it's only going to become increasingly so in Australia and the world, that we can't afford to just write people off. We've got to support them and understand what's happening, because then you can end up with an employee that's loyal for life almost, or that understands how you operate and understands how the business operates, and can be a really valuable employee for the long term, and then can almost be a poster child for your workplace. They can spread the word of, I had a really great working experience in this venue, which benefits everyone. And, at the end of the day, it benefits the person. But without it sounding malicious in that there is an ulterior motive, it is benefiting your business. And as as a workplace, as a manager, as a business owner, you know, that is ultimately what you're trying to achieve in your workplace.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's a number of great great insights in what you've just shared there, and you know, working back through them, we all understand that there is a financial result or a financial impact for any business on turnover of staff. You know, stats suggest 1 year's salary is lost each time we need to replace an individual. So as you said, ulterior motive, absolutely. I mean, it makes smart business sense to want to build a loyal, committed, engaged team that are going to stay with you for the longer term rather than the shorter term. And that's not to simplify it by saying that that you know, everyone deserves a place on your team. Clearly, it comes with a clear expectation that we want people to perform well. We want them to generate the kind of results for the business that's going to allow that business to flourish. So from a non-emotional business perspective, it makes smart sense to want to keep good people on your team.
Okay.
The other part that I thought was really, really key to highlight in there was the bit you said about this particular individual had been a notable employee. They had been a strong performer for a fairly significant period of time, and then you noticed that performance started to drop off. And I think that's a really, really key point that needs to be reinforced, is that the behaviour that we see any individual demonstrate in the workplace is simply a measure of their attitudes, their thinking, their emotions, and gives us some sort of or paints some sort of picture for how their personal life and professional life are sort of working in harmony together. Yes. And when we notice, a change in someone's behaviour, that really needs to serve as a little flag, a little notification, if you like, a little warning sign of perhaps something's not going on here.
Definitely. Gone are the days where you can leave your troubles at the door. That's not realistic anymore. With the prevalence of what you've mentioned before, that I'm quite passionate about, is depression and anxiety, bipolar, eating disorders, substance abuse. We can't ignore those anymore in our workplace because they're there. And the awareness around depression and anxiety, particularly in the media. If someone had a broken arm, you'd grab the door for them. If they had a broken leg, you'd help them up the stairs. Depression and anxiety are just as debilitating, if not more so. But no one's helping them. No one's talking about it in the workplace because it's just sort of this, the elephant in the room that no one wants to touch. And there's this. I feel as though that emotional intelligence in the workplace, that word is become a bit airy fairy, and I think a lot of people just kind of write it off as though it's someone's just being a bit soft or harden up sort of thing. And it's not that. I think it probably should be termed a different way. I don't know, psychological understanding in the workplace or something, because the word emotional just elicits a particular vision, I guess, to most managers, particularly old world sort of managers that just don't quite understand. Well, you've got a great job, you've got a roof over your head, you've got friends and family, why would you be depressed or why would you be anxious? But we really need to start to understand those things better, the physiological response, the psychological effects, so that we can achieve, that person's that person can operate at 110%, not only for the benefit of themselves but for your business.
Yeah, there's. I couldn't agree more. I mean, today's business world is certainly placing some pretty significant demands on the way we go about leading and managing the workforce today, given that we've still, in some cases, baby boomers are still in the workplace. We've got Gen X in the workplace, we've got Gen Y, Gen Z. all the millennials are moving in, Gen Z is now moving in. There is just this absolute melting pot of experience, of skills, of adaptability to the constantly changing demands within the workplace, and all of that pressure, is making people react in different ways. And if I just throw these particular stats at you, that 1 in 5 people in the workplace, it's been researched that 1 in 5 people in the workplace are currently experiencing some form of mental illness. That 75% of all doctor visits now are stress related. That the World Health Organization believes that in the year 2020, which is only 4 years away now, stress will be the biggest disease afflicting the worldwide population. And I think even more alarming is that Australia is now the 2nd largest prescriber of antidepressants in the world, and we're second only to Iceland, who for 8 months of the year don't see sun. These are all statistics that should make us sit up and take notice about the internal battle, the internal challenge that a number of people around us are facing. That, as you said, the analogy that you said, someone's got a broken arm, we hold the door for them to help them carry something. The fact that these particular conditions are moving rapidly through our workforce, we need to be tuned in to signs, symptoms, that there may be something that's misaligned for that individual.
That's it. And I think, if they receive some professional help, either from a social worker, from a psychologist, from a psychiatrist, what they're essentially doing is giving these people tools to put in their toolbox. People that experience depression and anxiety, they might be able to overcome that, but it's definitely going to rear its head. There's some really great Beyond Blue cartoons that really illustrate it really well to people who don't understand that it's just these little underlines to poke its head up every now and again, wants to strike you when you're down. So to have those tools in your toolbox, if you broke your leg, you've got crutches. If you've broken your arm, you'd have a sling. It's the same sort of support that you can help yourself get out of that, and it's all about that resilience. And I guess if you wanted to really poke or try to analyse why Australia is the 2nd largest prescriber of antidepressants, it's probably because of the nanny state that we've come to realise that we're in, and that, I guess, for me, I've observed a lot of Gen Zs and the younger Gen Ys. They just don't have that resilience in the workplace. They just think that it's a hard day or it's a hard job. They're just going to throw in the towel and not give it a go and learn from it and grow from it. And I'm often spruiking, particularly in schools, that hospitality in Australia is often seen as a bridging, as a gap job, whilst they're studying, or in between them finding what their career. But I always tell everyone in schools that, the skills that you have, that you obtain in the industry, and almost in any industry you went in, even if you went into retail or anything like that, that you come out with this set of skills that you can take to any job. I don't think it's being educated well enough that dealing with people in the service industry will take you so far. I've had so many of my staff that have either worked with us, and they're nurses, they're architects, they're naval engineers, they're sea logistic people, all these really random things, and lots in medicine, that have said to me, their experience in the restaurants, they notice the difference between those that haven't had a proper job before. Their resilience, their bedside manner is different. They can't handle stressful situations, and it's all about learning how to deal with that stress.
And all of those professions you noticed, or that you mentioned there, you noted there, I think we can all agree that they are not easygoing professions. They are not one task at a time type
No,
professions.
no.
There are there are all manner of external demands, expectations that are placed on those on the individuals working in those particular areas. That, as you said, are certainly very representative of your career path thus far, which has been high pressure, high demand, and high responsibility. So,
Mm-hmm.
so what is it that you think taught you the level of resilience that you've built over that time?
I guess personally for me, probably stemmed from when I was in school. You know, I am of Asian appearance. I did grow up in Australia, but I was only one of two Asian people in my school, in both primary school and high school, and that came with a lot of racial abuse, and that's just expected in a community that hasn't seen a lot of different ethnic cultures, and that I came to accept that, but I certainly became resilient from those experiences. And I guess as I got older and into the workplace, I always felt that I don't know, I can't remember if a manager even mentioned it to me or if I just cottoned onto it myself, but I guess I thought every negative experience would still teach me something. I can still take something from that. I think I had a pivotal moment when I was working in a hotel where I had a really, really bad working experience. I'd leave the workplace almost in tears every day from the upper management, just not knowing how to treat the staff. Getting in trouble for the minibar not having, losing one Freddo Frog from the minibar, and we couldn't find where that had gone missing. And then I walked away just thinking, that is how I will never treat my staff that way. But I'm appreciative that I have experienced that, because now I know what not to do. I know how not to treat people. I also had an experience at a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Florence a few years back. My husband and I wanted to check out, the top end, being in the industry, and we had it was almost $1,000 Australian dollars in the end, the bill, and we had the worst experience. They made us feel so unwelcome, and that we were dressed as Aussie plebs or something. We were dressed up to the nines, and they just made us feel so horrible. We walked away so upset, but we walked away thinking, right, we have learnt how not to treat our customers. So I guess I've just gradually learnt the resilience, because I guess in maybe a masochistic way, I guess I can still take something from that negative, despite how uncomfortable it is at the time. I guess I like to reflect and go, right, I'm going to just be tougher next time. Particularly owning business in the first few years, being a young, of Asian appearance female, I copped, a lot from customers, quite often in tears. Whereas now, I guess I just, if someone says something either racist or discriminatory or in any way, which amazingly still sometimes happens, I can just sort of deflect it now. So I guess it's definitely you need to pursue wanting to be resilient. You need to want that, and particularly, and as well, going back to the emotional intelligence, and a manager being aware of that particular team member being maybe not right in some way, and perhaps approaching them to help them. They're going to want that help. They're going to have the mindfulness themselves that they need help, or that they need support, and they can get over it. But sometimes they don't always want that, or they're not mindful enough to realize that there is an issue that needs to be dealt with. Denial is, we all love to deny a lot of things. So yeah, definitely that emotional intelligence, it needs to be both parties come to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I guess the old saying, "You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink." We can
right.
offer we can offer solutions. we can offer opportunities to approach those things that are happening in our life that may be impacting on us in a negative way. Ultimately, the decision, as it was in your case, for the taunts or the remarks made about your appearance as you described, ultimately it's still the decision you make on what you want to make those mean for yourself and about others. That is the difference in building resilience, isn't it? It's that focus. And again, as a mentor said to me, and no one else is responsible for how I feel. And so if we learn to, or I think as you said, if we make a decision to build our resilience and consistently look for a positive lesson or a positive learning from any particular event, any particular situation, then we really start to build up this, I think, this really healthy level of self-esteem, of self-worth, self-value, which goes on to create some pretty outstanding workers. Because I guess the question I have for you there is, given that range of experiences that you've had, both from a personal nature, growing up, to a professional nature, working under management or executive teams that we've all experienced, that probably taught us a lot of lessons around what we don't want to do moving forward. How do you reckon that's helped you to shape your businesses, and more importantly, to shape the quality teams that you've got working within those businesses?
I guess I have been in a fairly unique position directly in this business that I do now currently co-own, because I was an employee before I was the employer. But I guess that you can still just, no matter where you came from or where you had worked or what you do possibly own now or run now, you can still take from what you've experienced as an employee to whatever position you're in now. Anyway, I was very aware of how I was being treated, and how I needed to remember to get down onto their level, and to remember that every individual has an expectation of what that job will bring them, what that position will bring them, what benefits that the job will bring them. And I guess it is, we have 65 staff between the three businesses, and despite the amount of work that takes to understand each individual's needs and wants, is really important. And I feel that we have such a great team because I've been able to understand individually what they require to get the job done for my own business needs, for what they want to achieve in their own personal development, for their professional development, and what they want. And it's not, I guess I have an really open dialogue, I guess, and honesty with staff to make them aware of what is possible and what's not possible. Because I do think, particularly Gen Zs, they expect a lot compared to someone who's Gen X in the workplace. And I have a number of older staff. I don't want to call them old, but they are older than the younger ones. And they have different expectations of what a job is. And as you said before, we have this melting pot of all these different generations. And that means a different set of expectations. So, the Gen Zs, they want their cake and they want to eat it all. They want to have social life. They want to have autonomy. They want to be empowered. They want to have responsibility. But then flip the coin in 2 seconds, they don't want the responsibility. They want to take it easy. They want a cruisy job. They want to have every Friday, Saturday night off, which is obviously not not realistic in my industry. But it's coming to compromise about that, and letting them know where we are as a business and where I sit, I guess, in my human resources, and to let them know, well, yeah, sure, I'm going to give you a weekend off every now and then, but you've got to be aware that for me to achieve that, you've got to give me something too. And I think a lot of, particularly Gen Zs, they forget that an employee-employer relationship is a give and take. It's give and take, and it's a two-way street, and the relationship has to work from both sides. It's not just all the employer doing everything for the employee. The employee has to remember that it is a workplace. They are providing them with an opportunity and a job, and a great workplace at that. You know, we really strive to ensure that people aren't being overworked. They get their 2 days off a week in a row. The split shifts are kept to a minimum. You know, they get fed, they get watered, they get their coffee, they get discounts in the restaurants. You know, there's all those sorts of things that you can do internally from a manager's and an owner's perspective to try to balance keeping them happy, but giving those things, some of those extra things that are a privilege, not just a right. The employee has to understand that comes at a cost to the business, and they're doing that because they appreciate what they're worth, and that they do contribute to the business. So it's a really fine balancing act to, you know, and so the saying goes, you give an inch, they take a mile. You know, you really do give them a little bit, you empower them, and then suddenly they, you know, it can go the wrong way, and it doesn't always work. And yeah, it's just, and when I'm training managers as well, I'm always, you know, the first thing I say is that work all the staff to the best of their ability. Aces in their places is what I learnt at McDonald's. There's no point in trying to force someone into something that they don't want to do, or they don't, a role that they can't achieve, either because they don't want to in their mind, or they just don't have the ability or the skill. I think in a lot of workplaces we force people to do something that they possibly aren't either trained for, B, they just, they psychologically have a barrier that they don't want to do it, or C, they just don't want to do it for whatever reason. And so instead, you know, we work with them to achieve still a role in the business that is still important, but not forcing them to be something that they're not. And then you know, that emotional intelligence comes into it as well. And when people are battling, you know, some really emotional things outside of work, for example, one of my girls was experiencing, you know, just some really, really big personal issues outside of work. And I said to her, how can I help? What can I do? Can I find a psychologist for you? Can I be an ear to just, you know, let it all out? Can I give you shorter shifts? Do you want to move your role into being, you know, I guess the way we have our restaurant structured is that the bar staff don't really have as much customer contact with the customer as say a waiter. So for example, you know, would you prefer to just work in the bar for a couple of hours a night rather than being out there and possibly getting a little too emotional, or having someone, you know, trigger something that's, you know, happening in your life? You know, so working with them and being rather, you know, because at the end of the day, you've still got a business to run. You still need those people to do the job, but you can alter it in a way and sort of structure your business to allow for that flexibility. So that they can still feel supported, but still have, you know, still be earning a wage and still be contributing, and not have the stress as well of not having any hours or not working.
Yeah, it's the word you use, their contribution, is so important, isn't it? I mean, at any time when we feel that we're making a worthwhile contribution in what we're doing, I think a lot of the focus shifts from ourselves to the enjoyment, or the happiness that we're creating for others. And even momentarily, that anxiousness, that depressive type thinking can be lifted. And when that's coupled with a really healthy level of support and a level of care that's directed towards, you know, those individuals, by their management team. It does do an awful lot to create a sense of engagement, sense of empowerment within them. And I guess, what I'm one of the key ideas I'm hearing out of that is this. I guess very much the key element of empathy. You seem to have a really, really natural feel for acknowledging where someone's at and then working with them to provide an environment or flexibility that sees them remain connected to the business, connected to the team, while you explore ways for them to get the support and the help, be that external professional help that's going to allow them to move forward. I guess what I'm saying, Becky, is what I'm not hearing is it's not a case where you simply go, well, gee, they're not working too well, therefore, well, we'll just have to lump it. It seems to me very much more of we're going to find opportunities to get the support you need while supporting you in-house. And ultimately, though, that comes with the individual's decision and commitment to find a solution for them. So I guess I could imagine that a number of people listening would go, well, gee, in our place, it's really hard to, we've got some people that just aren't performing. I think it'd be really, really useful just for you to share some of your experience on what have you done or how have you handled situations perhaps where an employee doesn't necessarily want to make that shift.
Well, to start with, if someone's not performing and you're not quite aware of what's happening, just to simply sit down and have a conversation with them and actually start the conversation with how do you feel you're going in your role, or are you enjoying the job? Are there things that we can do to improve your experience at the moment? And then you can listen to what they have to say. They might actually have some things to say that you perhaps weren't aware of that were happening in the workplace, and things that you might actually, go, oh, actually, yeah, maybe that is something we need to improve. Or they might say, look, I feel like I need more training to be able to do the job well. So then that's something that you might be able to come to the party with. And then you can go into the conversation with how you've observed their performance. I think a lot of conversations probably start with, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, rather than giving them the chance first to say how they're feeling. And then from that, you've said your part, they've said their part, you've said your part. You can come together and figure out, is there a way you can move forward together, or is it just a natural thing that perhaps that the workplace just isn't for them, and that person's not for that workplace, and that workplace isn't for that person, and that can be absolutely fine, and that can end nicely, and it doesn't have to be an awkward situation. I'm sure every HR person out there hates getting rid of someone, telling them that they don't have a job. So it can be a natural, where they can accept that, yeah, maybe it's my time to move on, and that can all end amicably and quite nicely. And I guess then for people that have not, just continue with that conversation. So they've perhaps said 2 or 3 things that they require from us. We've given them 2 or 3 things that we require from them, and then just keep reviewing it. So whatever your requirements are in the business, whether it be a 1-week thing, it's a small thing that needs to be done, or it's a 2-week, 3-week, 4-week review, you come to that point and discuss it again. And if those things have not changed, you've done your part. And that's the thing, the workplace has to work really hard to providing what they require to be able to do their job. And if you can't come to the party on that, then you need to tell them that, that's just not possible for whatever reason. And if they've not come to the party with what you've asked of them in the workplace, then again, you need to go, okay, well, where do we go from here? And it just needs to be a really open conversation. And you need, I guess we've had some amicable and good end of relationships within the workplace, because we've gone through that dialogue, and they've understood what we require, and that they perhaps aren't meeting that requirement, and that maybe we have not met their requirements for what they're looking for in a job. And particularly, I mean, and then we could open up the conversation and go back to when you're hiring. So in my recruitment process, you know, one of the main questions that I ask my interviewee is, what do you expect from your manager? And then you can assess your workplace's values according to what they're expecting. And that's the thing, we are so driven and biased to what we expect, and that's all created in our own minds. And you can't really get in there and change people's expectations without them actually experiencing a difference of what they're expecting, if that makes sense. Yeah. So you've got to you can't change someone's values and what they expect a culture to be from the get-go. So perhaps those people in the interview process, they can have all the right things, they can have all the right skills, but ultimately they have to fit with your values, and they've got to fit with your team. You know, when we purchased this share in Stillwater, and you know, we inherited all these staff that I hadn't necessarily hired, and so it became quite a process of, it probably took 2-3 years to really get, just from natural attrition, to get the workplace to be where we wanted it in terms of a team environment where everyone worked well together. And I witnessed how just one person in the team can just be like a cancer. I know that sounds really extreme, but they just rub people up the wrong way. The workplace becomes just unenjoyable for everyone involved. So just being really aware of that in the recruitment process is really important, because you drop someone into that mix and you could potentially ruin all the work you've done to get your culture to a particular level. Yeah,
there's I mean, culture is such an important part. And I think for many people, they don't necessarily understand what culture is, or how do you measure culture. And I guess the easiest way to describe it, if you travel from Australia to any other country, how would you know you're in a different culture? Well, it's simply by what you see, what you hear, what you feel. And one thing that keeps coming up for me as I listen to you talk, and it is this very clear focus on what the expectations are. Which is simply another way of saying, you know, what are the results that you expect to see? What are the results you expect to hear? What are the results you expect to, and what will you feel from that? That, you know, adds value for the team, for the business, for the customer. And I guess I look at it and I go, you know, linking back to you and everything that you've achieved, and obviously, you know, with the nominations and successes in national awards, you have you obviously have a very, 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 very clear focus on what your own expectations are, and your own expectations of yourself, of the staff you employ, and the businesses. And I guess what I see there is that you work very diligently and deliberately around giving people the best possible opportunity they can to meet the expectations, realistic expectations, which I would suggest would create a really positive experience for them as part of the broader employee group. And if we're coming to work each day with, I guess, with a sense of confidence that we're going to be able to do the work we're asked to do, and we're working with like-minded people, hence the experience of going to work is a good one. It's a healthy one. It's a positive one. And if things, if any one individual's behaviour starts to fragment a little or drop off, then you've got this amazing ability to demonstrate, a high level of care towards them, I think really, really strong compassion towards them as an individual and their own personal situation. And the questions you're asking, a real curiosity to get to understand from their perspective what it is that might be troubling them. And history tells me that the managers, the individuals, the people who can demonstrate to anyone, great levels of care, of compassion and curiosity, are those people that are able to build a very deep level of trust within anyone. And that is the hallmark of a great team, isn't it, really? So I'm sure it hasn't been as deliberate as that. Would you suggest that that's a way that you've been able to create around you teams of people that have allowed you to I guess experience in a positive fashion the work that you do?
Yeah, I guess it really comes down to trust. Trusting that someone can do the job, someone can, the people that you empower as managers to run the business for you, they've got to have that same philosophy that you do. And I'm a big believer of the fish rots from the head down. And, I really feel as a manager in the business that I have to lead by example. So I look after tables as I expect others to. I polish the cutlery. I would clean the toilets the way that I would expect my managers to. And I guess for people that are listening that perhaps don't have that that ability, that they have different tiers and they're sort of, they've got upper middle management, all that sort of thing, that you can still lead by example by your interactions, and then by instilling in your middle management the philosophy that you have, and to make that really, really clear. To not fly off the handle at someone for no reason. And if you do, I mean, we're all human, that you can explain why, that I guess as well, we're always very aware of, this whole conversation has all been very aware of what the employee is experiencing, and your frontline employees, and how their stress levels are. But you also need to have that open dialogue so that they understand how stressed you are. And that doesn't need to be a conversation of, oh, poor me, feel sorry for me, I need a pat on the back. It's just that, I've got a lot on my plate and I'm under just as much, if not more stress than perhaps a frontline employees, or in a different stress. And that they just need to understand that. And again, that two-way street, just understanding from both perspectives. And my staff have been fantastic. I guess I put in a lot of trust in them to be able to do the job whilst I am off doing all these other extracurricular things. I've had a lot of trips away this year. I'm at schools a lot. I'm not in the business as much as I perhaps was maybe last year or earlier in the year, particularly with studying as well. My head's quite often in books, and I'm out at uni during the semester. And I've earned their respect. I haven't demanded their respect. So if something is going on, or I do the rosters and I can occasionally make a little mistake, and they will be really understanding of, oh yeah, Bianca's really busy, so I'm not going to bother her. I'm going to speak to the other this manager and see what I can do about getting this fixed. They've got to understand where you're coming from.
And I think that demonstrates a really healthy level of vulnerability. I mean, overall, it just shows that you're human, and that none of us are either Superman or Superwoman. And I guess being open and saying to people, hey, missed that roster spot, or sorry for speaking a little more sternly towards someone. It does build that connection that we have, and that we want with people who are part of our team. With that, and I love what you said there about yes, the majority of today's conversation has been focused on the frontline employees, or looking at our employees for any signs of stress. And I love what you said, which which we also need to be really aware that there's a personal toll that the workplace takes on everyone as a middle manager, whether that's new or established manager, business owner, executive, senior executive. That emotional intelligence is also being aware when we're under pressure, when that individual is under a huge level of strain, because the expectations placed on people in today's modern business world are huge. I know a number of my clients are working to incredibly big budgets, incredibly tight timelines, and an incredibly high number of projects. So the conversation around stress, around pressure, is a very real and challenging one for so many.
That's right. I guess, as a manager or anyone in a position of authority needs to be really that mindful word has really come up a lot in the last 12 months, hasn't it? But you've got to be really conscious and almost treat it like it's like almost like a medication, like it's a prescription that you have to make time for yourself. I'm very aware of my own emotions, and that sometimes I just need to watch a zombie movie because I'm quite partial to horror movies. That I just need to chill out and take time for myself. I bought one of those colouring in mindfulness books, and I was actually really surprised as to how it did get me to switch off. Just to colour in between those lines was like, wow, I just had 15-minute break where I wasn't thinking of anything, because I find, going for a run or something like that sometimes it can be therapeutic, but I can almost find it can be stressful in that you've got the time and you're by yourself with your music that you're thinking about all the things. Oh, I need to do that. I need to do this. I need to take that dry cleaning there. I need to speak. I find, I do like boxing sessions and things like that. Things that I'm really conscious of that will completely switch me off work, and it just needs to be treated like you have no choice to do
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, look, and I think you're spot on, and again that's a clear indicator of the importance of emotional intelligence, or I think personal insight, personal awareness, is that it's in terms of managing, maintaining one's own health and well-being, and therefore one's own mental and emotional well-being, is to find moments in your day, in your week, pockets of time, as I often refer to them, where we do get to switch off. And the irony to that is that when we switch off from those tasks that are problematic or challenging for us, the brain or the unconscious mind actually starts to kick into creatively solving that particular problem. When we come back to it, we often find, hey, if I do that, I'll make progress, or I'll get closer to solving that particular problem. And in the busy days, the busy days and weeks that we all face, committing to those moments, scheduling those moments in, is a real game changer in the way in which we respond to staff around us, not least of all the example that we can set. That I think comes back to what we were saying before about being tuned in to how other people are travelling in their life as well.
That's right. Just touching on that, I had an experience at college with a youth mentoring, or a girls mentoring sessions, and we were sitting around a table discussing goals and obstacles, and it was a very clear moment of clarity for me, where there were 4 girls. 2 knew exactly what they wanted to do. They were in year 12, and they have exams. They're in exams now. 2 were in year 2 knew exactly what they wanted to do after college, and 2 of them were unsure, and they were even considering going into year 13, just I guess to buy themselves some time, and just in case they want to go to uni sort of experience. And it was it was such a clear moment when we were discussing what their obstacles are of achieving their goals, was that the girls that knew exactly what they wanted to do, their obstacles were internal, whereas the girls that didn't know what they wanted to do, all their obstacles were external. And so I guess what I'm trying to relate that back to is that when someone in the workplace perhaps is blaming or trying to use a lot of the external things in the environment, attributing to what they have a problem with, that's sort of why you've got to kind of assess, well, what's going on internally, because you're trying to blame a lot of things on the external factors when perhaps it is the internal factors that need to be addressed. And I guess not a lot of people have that insight into acknowledging that that might be the case.
I've never actually heard it put like that, but I think that's a really, really important takeaway message from that, is that it's that yin and yang, literally, isn't it? That people who are so focused, the fear of success that we've often heard about, the internal blocks, or that internal frustration that we feel of knowing we want to get to that higher point, but we're kind of stuck a little bit where we are. The only thing preventing, in most cases, the only thing preventing progress is the individual themselves. And as you said, it's those internal beliefs that we have, or the internal values that that we feel will be misaligned if we make the move, can be what holds us back. I love the extension to that, which is people who don't know what to do. Often it's a level of blame or a victim mentality, martyrdom, if you like, of, well, I can't be happy because of all these things that are happening around me. And if we take it from the perspective of nothing changes around us until something changes within us, that really is the essence of empowerment for all. And while none of us are responsible for what someone else does in their own life, as a manager or leader, we certainly are responsible, I believe, for having the conversation, or being prepared to have the conversation with someone around hey, what's going on? Notice that you're struggling a little, or performance has dropped off, and that element of curiosity, compassion, I think, is often what uncovers some of those hurdles, some of those beliefs, the stories we all tell ourselves inside of our head of why this isn't working, why that's not good enough, and why I deserve more pay, can all come to light, and therefore we put ourselves in a position to influence, not only what that person does, but how they feel about themselves as they set about taking some corrective action to improve what they deliver. And given that we're more likely to fall off a bike when we're standing still than when we're pedaling down a road, those are the conversations that you're talking about and that you're having, and encouraging other people to have, really go a long way to improving that mental and emotional well-being for everyone. So it's I think a great lesson of what to look for, and how to recognise those challenges that people are having. And I guess that leads on to one of the final questions as we look to wrap it up, which is, given that there's so much happening in the workplace, it's so complex, it's so pressurised, what do you think are the greatest challenges facing new managers or people managing in this new millennium, in the context of emotional intelligence?
I guess having that understanding is that really broad understanding of what's really psychologically happening to everyone really in society, and the things that we are faced with every day. You can go to plenty of workshops now that are delivered for emotional intelligence and the psychology of your workers and all that sort of stuff. But I'm doing as you've mentioned, the part-time degree. What I've learnt over that course, and it's been years, how can that be communicated to, and how can a manager that's time poor really understand all those things? You know, I'm not saying every manager out there has to go out and get a psychology or a behavioral science degree. They can certainly have an empathy and a compassion and an understanding, but it is just so complex. And I guess, the complexities, I think, is what is really the challenge that everyone is faced with. The complexities of the intergenerational differences, those generations, the differences within those groups of people. Person has a different expectation and a different want, and that, you know, you need to balance to still be able to deliver what you're there to do, and that is to run a business, to make a profit, to provide a service to your customers, to have an enjoyable workplace where you want to go to work, not just your staff. So there's, I guess, just really the understanding of a really complex issue is what I think is going to be the biggest challenge for managers, millennials.
Yeah, and I guess the strange dichotomy around that is that while it is so broad and it's so complex, it comes down to one simple truth, which is if any manager, leader seeks to have just a little more understanding about what can be contributing to those, those challenges, those concerns, those problems, that it actually puts them in a great position of influence, of inspiration, of authority to assist any person to move beyond their current state into something that's healthier, that's happier, that's more fulfilling. So I guess, we both of us, very much proponents that exactly, no one's saying you've got to suddenly go and have a postdoctoral degree in human psychology or human behaviour. Simply just look to continue extending your knowledge and your understanding of what what behaviour is, what psychology is, and there's plenty of ways. I mean, there's CD series, there's audio books, there's podcasts, there's all these things that can be done on the daily commute, which we know we've all got to do. And it's those lessons, those learnings, those insights, those new understandings, the new awareness that invariably any one of us will have access to, or will become new tools that we can use in moments where we may have otherwise felt out of our depth. And in that instance, when any one employee, colleague, peer, client, customer, is having a tough time of it, we've got something to offer, or they've got something to offer, and I think that's really that is it's a magnificent quality to have for any leader, any manager.
Yeah, and definitely you can listen to all those things and read all the books and everything like that, but understanding exactly how to apply it relevant to your workplace and relevant to your particular team is also the next step in benefiting from that, and understanding why. What, when I train staff, I tell them why do we carry a plate like that? Why do you set cutlery like that? There's a reason why for everything. And I think if you understand the why and the benefits that you and the team, your business, everyone will experience, your customer, is what you need, what everyone needs to keep in mind and to keep right at the front of their thought process as to why you're doing these things.
Which promotes that clear understanding, which gives them a really an appreciation of the expectations that we have on people, and when people feel that they can meet the expectations placed on them by others, that becomes a strength. It becomes a skill that they want to utilise, that they want to amplify, that they want to incorporate into the work that they do, because as you said, I mean that links back to the benefit that we get out of doing good work or looking good in the eyes of others, and that all comes back to a reflection on our own self-worth, and with a higher level of self-worth, a higher level of self-value, self-esteem, then that will go a significantly long way towards reducing the levels of depression and anxiety that is currently pervading the modern day professional world. So just to wrap up, to summarise, Bianca, and I guess to leave anyone listening and everyone listening to the recording, what would be the best bit of advice that you've got if people are noticing that their team or someone on their team or individuals seem to be suffering from or maybe not suffering, but are being impacted by in a negative way by something they're uncertain of? What would be your advice on how to approach that?
Just to approach it in a way that will make them feel comfortable. So whether or not that's pulling them aside at an appropriate time by themselves, and actually having that one-on-one conversation in a quiet environment where you're away from other viewing eyes. I'm sure most workplaces love to thrive off, a bit of gossip and a bit of what's happening there. To actually pull them aside and to actually have that conversation, whether or not that's you send them a text and say, if you have that open sort of, if that's appropriate in your workplace, do you want to grab a coffee? I just want to chat to you about a couple of things, when is suitable for you, that sort of thing, to really just get down on that personal level and just to have a conversation with them, and to almost, if some things come out in that conversation, you can say, I'm concerned for you, or, you've got to obviously genuinely be concerned, but say, let them know that you are genuinely concerned for them on a personal level. This is not just for the business. This is not just for your benefit as a manager. This is to understand and that you care for them. We all want to feel cared for. We all want to feel important. Yeah. We all want to feel valued. And to actually make that person feel, and to remind them that they are actually valued by you as a person, by the workplace, by the business, can really completely shift their self-worth, their self-esteem, their ability to maybe overcome what they're experiencing on the outside by themselves. And they might not actually tell you anything. They might just, I've had a couple of conversations where I've discussed things and they've not told me what was going on, but they've burst into tears and just said, I'll be okay, but thank you for your concern. Thank you for asking. And then you can see a little shift in them. You can see a little twinkle in their eye that they trust you, you trust them, and that you've made them feel cared for and appreciated. So you don't have to actually have to uncover something deep and dark, and don't be scared of having that conversation, because I know it was very nerve-wracking the first few times that I did actually pull people aside and say, what's going on. I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with whatever they were going to say, but you've just got to bite the bullet. You've got to suck it up and be strong, and you've got to be the rock.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. It's very much being prepared to be the first one to make the approach and not have to know the answers, but simply show that you care about them, and that you are there for them, to provide that support, to provide that that kind ear. And in some cases it'll be complete shifts in the trajectory of their life, where someone will go from a waiter in the hospitality industry to pursuing a medical career. For some, it'll just be a natural shift in their attitude that they actually make some subtle changes in life, which generate a level of a new level of fulfillment or comfort in what they're doing. So the opportunity to have a positive impact on someone else from simply having a conversation with them is one of the greatest gifts that any manager or leader, I believe, gets to experience from that position of authority, if you like. So
yes, and you don't even need to have that much of a relationship with them, but for that person, for you to notice them is probably all that needs to be acknowledged. They might not even think, perhaps the workplace is huge that you're in, and for that person to go, oh wow, my added, I was noticed. I am still an important part of the team. Can really mean a lot. And we're all very time poor, but you have to take that time to have the conversation with people. It's just there's no question about it. You've just got to make the time.
Absolutely, and from a business perspective, it certainly takes a hell of a lot more time to recruit a new staff member than it does to spend 5 or 10 minutes or whatever it takes with an existing staff member, just to highlight to them the value they have, reaffirm the expectations, recommit to supporting them as part of the team, and the results can be they can just be outstanding for everyone involved. So
that's right.
I really do, really do hope that everyone listening, takes away with them, I think a stronger desire to want to demonstrate to the people around them that they do notice them, they do see if someone's struggling, if someone's feeling a little down, and feel comfortable, not necessarily to begin with, but learn.
I've lost you, Dean.
I know we've set a few dates, but I think the ability to get to this moment today, where we've had the good fortune of listening to you, hearing from you about all of these vital parts of a functioning team. And while they seem so complex, and I'm sure in some business places, they're so far away from achieving the kind of results you've got, or creating the kind of teams that you've got, I think it's been really, really valuable and really, really insightful into how easily that can be done. And as you said, for a girl from the burbs of Tasmania can go on to achieve all the things that you've done, and learn so much, and take so much of what you have learned to build and improve the lives, both professional and personal, of others. I think it's a really great inspiring story on what a little bit of knowledge can do. So from me to you, Bianca, thank you so much for your time, for your generosity, for your openness, for your honesty, for your experience. I've got absolutely no doubt that that so many people will take a lot of what you've shared today and be able to make some changes, no matter how small or no matter how big, into what they're doing, and really realise all the benefits that come with building stronger quality relationships and learning how to manage for this new millennium. So thank you so much again.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks. So from me here to everyone out to listening, here's to your higher success, and have a wonderful day. Bye for now.
Thanks.